Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne, yeah, 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds, down to Biscayne. Kept the flow playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, Inspire have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
Welcome back to Off the Floor. 5 on the Floor. I'm your host, Greg Sylvander. We're going to obviously plug Off the Floor. I bet you were expecting Ethan's voice. He has been an absolute in playoff form with the amount of episodes that have came out recently. But today, you're hearing Greg Sylvander, and with me is Alex Toledo. You can follow him on Twitter at Tropical Blanket. I'm at Greg Sylvander. We're going to get into an interesting topic that people have known that I've been avoiding today. Before we do, though, I want to shout out our daily fantasy sponsor, and that is Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com. This is the daily fantasy app where it makes fantasy simplified. You pick more or less on player projections, win real money up to 2,000 times, instant payouts, secure withdrawals. You can play Prize Picks in 45 states. You've got to use the code 5. That'll get you $50 instantly when you play your first $5. Prize Picks, the daily fantasy sponsor of 5 Reasons Sports. And I want to shout out our contest that we're doing during the NBA Finals. We have Ethan, Brady, Alex, and I all putting our picks on Twitter. You can choose your fighter, so to speak, and you can win promo funds depending on if we win and you choose one of us to be the winner. And you're right about that. You could win promo funds yourself. So join along with us on Discord or on Prize Picks, the daily fantasy sponsor of 5 Reasons Sports Network and 5 on the Floor. Use that code 5 for $50 instantly when you play your first $5. I told you I was going to plug Discord, so I'm going to do that quickly. $2.99 is all it costs for every month you to go to a place where you will find the most heat anywhere. It is our central location for all things Miami Heat, the most heat anywhere. We have channels to talk the draft. Adele is all over not player comps. He'd hate me to say that, but player evaluations. Alex is starting to deep dive into draft stuff. I'm sensing that.
Oh, I've been in it for a long time now.
See, so there's a lot of fun stuff happening, but just go to Off the Floor. The link's in the description here. Okay, that's the housekeeping notes. We're going to cut to the chase and get to the episode. So to just basically lay it all out there, but I'm going to give a little context on how we got here. The purpose of this episode is to discuss the idea of trading Bam Adebayo. I was dramatic in the way that I introduced that for a reason. One, I have been adamant on social media that that's not something that I'm very open-minded towards. I think everyone knows I'm a huge Bam Adebayo fan. There's always players throughout every era of Miami Heat basketball that you just are drawn to, however that goes. And Bam is one of those guys for me. So I am a Bam Adebayo fan. I want to see him in Miami for his entire career. And so I have basically, as people have engaged me on social media and things of that nature, I've kind of shut down all Bam trade talk. So that's like, if we're going to be real self-centered and talk about just why it matters for Greg Sylvander, that's that. But Alex, there's another part of this that we're going to talk about today too. And it's just the fundamental belief in if the Heat are a middling play-in team with not enough assets to go get the best players that will be available to supplement what they already have, and also kind of not enough in-house to just be one piece away. There are a faction of fans out there that ask the question as they see teams like Indiana, who just won game 1. I'm dating the podcast. I don't care. What a great game that was. They're seeing teams like Indiana reload as they traded Sabonis, traded Paul George, did things like that. And they're asking why would Miami not consider taking their most valuable asset and using it to accumulate more assets so that you could build and maybe kind of set this thing for the future. So you would take a step back because any team trading Bam gets worse in certain ways, but you would have assets to go forward with. Because I don't want to speak any further on the show without Alex getting a word in, Alex, let's just stick to the personal part of this for you. I know I'm making it super personal because I'm saying not only am I covering Bam, I'm watching him every game. We do these post-game shows. I'm doing off-day shows talking about the team. We are all, I mean, obviously that's just part of what we do, right? But also I'm a fan of Bam Adebayo. I'm not afraid to say that. Where do you stand as far as that's concerned? And then we'll get to the more practical parts of this.
I mean, look, I'm just going to start it off here by doing what everybody expects me to do and say it's a tough question, man. It's a tough question. No, look, the Bam thing is in all honesty, like that's the last thing that me personally, like that I would want, but I completely understand the questions. There's no doubt about it. And like, for example, just me personally, like I've been covering the team game by game since the first Jimmy season. So that's since Bam has been a starter. Bam was one of the first players I spoke to back with Miami Heat beat back in the day, right? So have just been around for all of it, of course, throughout the long playoff runs. And then I just think like it comes down to not only like a basketball team building philosophy type of thing, right? But also just like your evaluation, like of where the team stands, right? As far as you mentioned the one piece away thing. It's like if you don't believe that the power of Miami and the power of, hey, maybe we can get one more guy and then kind of work it out from there, right? Like to fill out a team around there. Like if you're not into that, then you're probably into the idea of at the very least a retool, and if not, maybe a hard reset. And you're right, like a hard reset to me, like Ethan and I did the episode, I don't remember how long ago it was now, like 2-3 weeks ago, talking about what you alluded to there with those trades that the Pacers and the Thunder made, right? Like you mentioned the Pacers trading away PG and then trading away Sabonis, and now have drafted well and have done stuff ever since. And there you go, like they did kind of what, like that is a retool. What they did, they didn't do a hard reset where they completely started all over, but they kept transitioning from build to build. And I think there's a lot of parallels with the way that the Pacers and the Heat operate, right?
Correct.
But then the Thunder, they got SGA and Jalen Williams by trading away PG, right? And the Clippers were willing to overpay because they knew that without that trade, they weren't able to get Kawhi. So they were essentially trading for both of those guys with that monstrous trade that everybody looks back on with hindsight now. It's like, wow, why'd they do that?
I don't blame the Clippers. Just I'll sneak that in there. I
mean, we
I
all
get why
thought
they
that was
did
a
it.
home run at the time.
If you
All
would have
of us.
told me that you were getting the title winning Kawhi and a running mate to go for a run with it, you make that trade. I think like people that with the benefit of hindsight have been a little too gotcha on that. I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress.
And like we were trying to figure out like canvas the league for like, would there be a way to do that with Tyler, where you do a trade like that, where you're trading somebody that's already, somewhat established, right? And trying to, push back the clock a little bit, where you're like, okay, we like this guy, maybe we can get another guy in this trade, and we'll just kind of, push the years back and
Like
I
Tyler
really,
Herro for Case and Wallace, like something like that.
I mean, hey, look, you could think of something like that too. I didn't even
We'll keep it
consider the
finals
Thunder.
themed.
I didn't even consider the Thunder. That's an interesting one. I really came down to like the Magic and the Pistons, and I was looking at like Jaden Ivey and Ron Holland, and then Anthony Black and Tristan Da Silva, stuff like that. But those wouldn't compare whatsoever to those type of trades we're talking about. What would, or at least what you maybe could get closer to with those trades, is trading Bam. I think Bam could get you a bigger haul than what Tyler could. And I think we all know that for a lot of reasons here. And not only that, he is, a couple of years older than Tyler. Like, just timeline wise, just off of straight age, you could make the case that Tyler could stick around for. I know a lot of people, specific like anti-Tyler people, don't want to hear that, but like he's hitting his prime, and if they were to hit a hard reset, all of a sudden, I bet you they could afford to pay up a little bit more with Tyler. It's like if you're trading away Bam's max contract.
Don't do
Right?
this to
So
me. I can't make it emotionally through this show. No, continue.
no, I just think like that's what a hard reset would look like. Is trading away Bam, potentially trading away Tyler, and then if you don't like the returns for him, you just hold on to him because he's still like somewhat like pretty young, even though he's obviously way further ahead. But I think me and you both, don't expect the Heat to do that. It's just that's the last thing that they ever do. So maybe they surprise us this time, but I just don't believe that that's the case. Like with all the scuffle, not the scuffle, the scuttle that's been out there with KD, with Giannis, they're always involved. They're always involved. I just don't believe that Pat, and not only Pat, but just the front office, that I cannot like picture a reality where they hit the hard reset like that and trade Bam and Tyler. It almost sounds like you know what I mean, like fan fiction. It's like I could never
100%.
consider that being a reality. Like what if I had to put like a percentage chance on that happening, on like the just blowing it up to that level, I would probably say like a 2% chance.
Yeah.
Like I just don't, and even then, like I don't know, like I really cannot see it happening. So even 2% might be saying a lot.
Yeah, and so there's a couple things here. I'm glad you went to the value of Bam, and also the likelihood of them doing something like this. I mean, like, let's just acknowledge it's not the Heat's way to take steps back. And I also think fans think that they want, like, when they see OKC pop up and show out.
That's a James Harden step back right there. If you hit that button,
Like, yeah, like it's
Several
kind
steps.
of everything has to go right too. Like a lot of teams have tried it and failed as well. And I just think that it's a lot easier to look at the successes of how
Yep.
it is that you navigate the asset management part of it. So I guess let me start here. What could you get for Bam? And I think that there's a couple different categories of like different packages that we could talk through. So one is you use Bam as the primary player in some sort of trade for a superstar who's better than Bam, and basically do something similar to when Riley got in Miami and traded Glenn Rice for Alonzo Mourning. And I famously was teary-eyed, upset at Pat Riley that he traded my favorite player, Glenn Rice, and it turned into one of the best moves in franchise history, yada, yada, yada. Like, that's one move. Like, let's say Giannis becomes available and Milwaukee didn't want to necessarily be a bad team immediately. They wanted to still try to contend because of their salary or whatever the heck their reasoning is. We can kind of put that aside. Or Giannis wants to stay East, however it were to happen. That's so. Let me put this out there. It's just so that people know I'm not stupid or crazy. Yes, if Giannis Antetokounmpo is available, you trade Bam Adebayo for him. I'm not crazy. I get that. There's probably a few other names, not Kevin Durant. Like, hell no. Like, I'm not there. Like 37-year-old Kevin Durant. Like, we're having arguments on whether you would include Ware in that package. Bam, that's not even a conversation. The other part of this is, so is there any all-star player that's out there that could get moved that you get that much better by flipping Bam for them? That's a question I think that you have to ask yourself. Like, who's out there around the league that maybe we don't think can be plucked out of their situation that would make the Heat exponentially better with Bam? I'm open-minded to those types of moves. Like, if you told me that the Giannis saga ended up with me having to stomach Bam in another jersey, but they got Giannis, I would understand why the organization did it, because like Giannis would put them in immediate contention. He's the type of guy that I think you obviously can feel good about building around. There's question marks on how his game will age. I think great players tend to figure it out if they're well conditioned, and he is one of those guys. So I would understand it. So that's one aspect of this. And I don't know that we need to canvass the league for the guys that you could get for him that would make sense. But then there's the other part of it, and it's the draft picks. Before I talk about the draft picks, because this is where I have a very specific kind of gripe with the way people are approaching talking about trading Bam and what a hard reset looks like. Are there any all-star players that come to your mind, or even like maybe like, let's not say an all-star, but a semi-star that's young that they could trade for Bam that would turn their clock back, but maybe allow them to be good again pretty soon? Because I don't think anyone wants to go through a really long period of being bad. Or is there a superstar that could get them in contention today that we're not considering that's out there? Like, obviously we saw Luka get traded. Like, is there someone out there like that you think we should at least consider on this show where we're entertaining the idea of trading Bam?
Well, that's the thing. It's like, for example, you already mentioned Giannis. That's the one where it's very tough to draw a line, right? Because it's like you're trying to figure out, like, even though it's a weird fit, right? Like you'd want to keep Bam with Giannis because that would be an insanely ridiculous front court, even with the fit stuff. You just try to figure that out. I think everybody but like the YouTube commenters prefer to keep Bam over Tyler in that scenario. But look, like it's just at that point you're trading Bam. Like, is Giannis and Tyler and whatever else you have left good enough, right? I don't know. Like, I just think that becomes a complicated scenario. Is that what Giannis wants? I don't know. And I think then you start, like, you asked the question about the other guys, whether it's guys who are ready now or guys who may be ready later. Like the names that come to mind as far as the guys who are ready now, a little bit younger, like Ant, but that's not going to happen. Obviously, like, why is Minnesota trading Ant for Bam? That one doesn't make any sense. That's just a name, that sort of fit the bill as far as that type of player.
Absolutely.
Up and coming player, like one that right away came to mind for like a team that might, think that this is the move to help them compete right away, like the Rockets, but that doesn't really make sense given like their team context either, right? Like Amen Thompson, right? Like, would you trade Bam for a package centered around Amen Thompson, right? But again, like it doesn't make sense for the Rockets, and I think they value Thompson ridiculously highly. I just, these are not like these scenarios, right? So we just keep coming back to like the same names, right? With Giannis, and I'm not really sure. Like, of course, if a guy like Jokic became available, you have to consider it. You absolutely have to consider it at the very least. And
you don't have to consider it. You do
exactly.
That's you calling off for everything. And I think that, like,
keep running back into the same problem where it's like, well, the team wouldn't be ready no matter who you're trading Bam for. But then it's like, well, how much do you believe in them being able to, like, again, the power of Miami.
Yeah, reset
right?
around them. Yeah,
The power of Miami, and I'm using it as a verb there.
Like,
like, how would you believe in them to be able to do that?
And so to your point, like maybe some of that would have to involve like multiple moves, like kind of in motion. And if the Heat knew that they were landing 2 players, for instance, or something like that, maybe they would get more open-minded to it. I'm glad that you brought up like the teams out there that like could potentially think that they have like younger players and Bam would be attractive. If somehow OKC fumbles the bag in this NBA Finals, I don't know why they wouldn't call Miami and like empty the treasure chest. I feel like that's like a missing piece there for a team like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but so that's the superstar angle of this, which I will acknowledge. If you found that kind of player, like the really high caliber, the Lukas of the league, Giannis, obviously, and players that are any higher up in the hierarchy, like I get it. Okay. So everybody can stop about Greg's delusional. He wouldn't trade Bam for, all the greatest players in the league. That's nuts. I'm with you. I understand it, even if it would hurt. Here's the other part of it. A lot of people, when they talk about this like idea of trading Bam, it's to, like, some people, instead of thinking about a blue chip, like big time all-star, Alex, they talk about accumulating a ton of assets. And this is where it gets weird for me, because I could think of nothing worse than losing Jimmy Butler the way they just did, and then processing some scenario where you traded Bam to, like, let's use OKC as an example. We'll stick with this finals thing. And also Oklahoma City, in order to really catapult them to the next level, they probably wouldn't want to send Chet Holmgren for Bam Adebayo. They'd want to supplement Bam with Chet. Again, this is all speculative. But you know what OKC does have? They have a lot of future assets, right? So they could comfortably offer, and if Mikal Bridges can go for 5 first, we can use that as just like a crazy trade, right? They could offer five first round picks for Bam Adebayo. But this is where I get hung up, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, Alex. What would pain me to no end is the idea of trading Bam after losing Jimmy like this. So you basically scrape out your entire identity, and your fan base is left with nobody that they feel connected to on this roster at all. But like, if you also got 5 first round picks that were like 15 to 23 in draft range, that just is the worst idea to me ever. And I know that picks before they get selected are more valuable than after they are. So this is where everyone would say, but you're going to take those picks and you're going to flip them for something else that's better. And to me, I middling, like, picks from good teams, I don't think is that attractive. Even if you got 5 of them, I don't know that OKC's 5 next drafts are worth, like, I love having those over Bam. I'll just be dead ass honest. And that might sound crazy. People probably disagree with me, but I don't think having the, like, in picks in the 20s to stockpile, I just don't see, one, how you're closing the deal on really big players with those type of picks. And maybe I'm wrong about that. And 2, I would want a blue chip asset if I'm going to part with the franchise cornerstone that's here, that will have his number retired. He's probably going to lead the Heat. If he sticks around, Bam Adebayo will end up the career leader in so many statistics. He's going to pass Dwayne. It's going to feel weird because we're going to say how he's not better than Dwayne, but he's passing Dwayne in a lot of measures if he were to stick around. I'm just not willing to give that up for a bunch of, like, Jaime Jaquez, Jovic level, like, player assets. That's where I stand. Am I crazy? Where do you weigh in on that?
I completely get it, man. I do get it. Even though I understand the hard reset line of thinking, I'm with you that the timing of it would suck. I think a certain part of me is like, well, it would be cool in the sense of them finally picking a direction, because that's something that I've been complaining about, specifically since at the very least last summer. You could say the summer before, but since last summer, with everything that did and didn't go down with Jimmy. And I think that would be picking a direction in such a very, like, obvious way, where it's like, okay, buckle down, everybody. Like, however many percentage of you wanted this, you're getting what you wanted. We're gonna start slow. And I don't see that happening, but something about it will be like, okay, at least they picked the direction. Again, I just think I'm with you in the sense of, it can't just be a bunch of OKC picks. And the good thing about that is they own other teams' picks. But, like, looking at the list, it's not that awesome, honestly. Like, they have a nice, like, volume of draft picks. There's no doubt about it. And look, like, some of them are other teams' picks, but again, it's like, I've got to, like, you got to put together a compelling package of first round picks. Like, one of them that I'm looking at here is like, okay, they own Utah's 2026 top 8 protected. I'm like, okay, I'm asking for that one, even if the highest it could go is 9. Is like, it's except Utah is not even, like, never mind. Like, that one is not even gonna it's not even gonna end never mind.
Convey.
This is not like, they have a lot of, like, playoff teams as picks. I'm looking at, I see Boston. Obviously, like, the Miami one this year. I see Denver. I see Dallas. Right. So again, they have a nice volume of picks that they can put together, and I think you would at the very least have to consider if they put together a package like what you're talking about there. Even if you don't love any one of those, if you're just stacking like 5 of them and you're getting somewhat close to Bridges, I think you consider it. I think that's that's something you consider if you're really thinking about resetting.
Totally. And like,
because that is the move right there. You do that, and then you can decide on what you do with Tyler. I think a lot of people will say, well, at that point, you just trade Tyler because what's the point?
yeah,
And I get that too. And it's just like, well, buckle up because it's going to be a long time because there's no guarantee that you're going to, even though everybody trusts Adam Simon and even though everybody trusts the scouting, like there's no guarantee whatsoever that you're going to be back in the mix. Or like, there's no guarantee that, maybe you don't, that you hit some guys. You hit on some guys and really like in a couple of years, they kind of punt on it and go back to what they've been doing and just like, no, we're just going to try to trade for the star. Right. So again, I don't see any of this happening, but it's like, maybe San Antonio also could get in the mix. Like if they strike out on Giannis, if, Durant stuff doesn't work out for them either. They kind of have a similar thing going on where it's like, how much of their picks do you want? But
I'm
yeah,
glad
like
you bring them up.
there.
I'm glad you bring them up. Sorry to interrupt you. And and the only reason I'm interrupting you is because I'll forget what I'm going to say if I don't spit it out right now.
No, it's all good.
San Antonio has the type of pick, like they got the second pick right in the draft,
and 14.
Like, if you told me that like the blue chip asset that you're getting back in your pick a direction moment and it is the number 2 pick in this draft and you're going to like take Dylan Harper and you're going to start that reset process.
I like that a lot better.
Like if you have to sell me on something and that's the blue chip asset that comes back, or if next year they own their first round pick and they were in a situation where they could like trade up to the number 1 spot and take the AJ, I don't know how to say his last name right now, I apologize, but he's going to go number 1 next year. Something like that, where like immediately you as a fan or an analyst of the team could identify like, okay, that's what we can latch onto to watch how it's going to grow. Right. I just think you alienate a large percentage of your fans if all you trade for is the idea of future assets and what you can do with them. And I think people underestimate how shitty, frankly, it is to go through season after season of being really bad, but also like not having anything to identify with. And all you'd have is really your head coach. And is your head coach wanting to go through a complete rebuild? I just think to all of that end, and we're getting close to wrapping up here, but for me, it's always been about like, if it's going to be a draft asset, it would have to be someone where I understand, oh, that's a blue chip pick that they just got, and not like a one that's 4 years from now. Cause like, remember when Miami had the most valuable asset that's floating around the league? I forgot which was it.
I think that's the one that's finally going to convey the 15th pick. It might be that one.
That's what I mean. And
also, or was it the Trey Mann pick?
Maybe Trey Mann. I think that's what the one was. Thank you for saying that. And also, I think that you've seen like just some of the picks that get thrown around in some of these trades. I don't know. Like there would have to be one of those really top names. So so now as we narrow this down and kind of form a cohesive ending here, it's the superstar that catapults you into contention immediately. You obviously think about that for Bam, but how many superstars are going to want to come to Miami and not play with Bam? I think that people underestimate that. The people who know ball, frankly, and that understand the league, understand what Bam brings on one side of the floor, and the players want to play with Bam like that. Like all of the players that have wanted to come to Miami recently, it has a lot to do with Spo and it has a lot to do with Mr. Bam Adebayo. So I just don't see what crazy player out there that like everybody's loves, like Anthony Edwards, for instance. Why the hell is he going to come to Miami for a fresh start with no one around him? I think that to close the loop on Tyler, because you mentioned him in terms of like, why not just trade him too? he's coming up for an extension sooner. So that's why I've been more willing to, and I also don't think he's as good a player as Bam. So let's just get that out the way. Because of Tyler's looming extension, it's been why I've been more open-minded on our shows to talk about trading Tyler. People think I got something against Tyler. It's not that. It's that he has an extension coming up. Bam doesn't. He's locked up. And I just don't know that even if you added one of those really top superstars to just Tyler, you could convince yourself that that's good enough. So again, what are we really doing there? And I don't know that the blue chip picks are going to be offered. So it's the middling first round picks and what you could do to flip those and kind of change the trajectory.
What could you flip with Tyler and the other stuff? But it's like you've already.
So let's think about that for 5 seconds. Like what would be a guy out there that you would say, okay, we've got Tyler who matches the money and is an all-star caliber player. And we're going to take all these picks and we're going to go present to the fans the new franchise pillar. Who is that player out there?
Well, that's the thing. First of all, they're going to have 3 tradable picks before draft night or on draft night.
Yeah.
Do I have that right?
Yeah.
How many picks do you think it would take? Like if Milwaukee's like, okay, like if the Heat are like, okay, we'll send you Bam. How many picks do you think it'll take on top of Bam?
Probably Bam plus 3.
Oh, so that's it. At that point, you're left with flipping Tyler and the young players. Does that get you a second star? Maybe. For a team that's looking to reset, it's like, okay, here's a bunch of young dudes and a guy who is still pretty young, but is further down the line.
Like if Giannis and Durant say, we want to team up in Miami, and you tell me that Bam has to go for that situation to figure itself out, I get it. And even if Tyler has to leave too, I would understand what they're trying to do, but like, I just don't see that happening. And, I'm trying to think if there's anyone else.
Yeah, that that's a pretty good one just because it's, it's topical. Those are the names everybody wants to hear about.
Yep.
So in that sense, I would absolutely consider that because it's like, that's like a very like classical Pat Riley type of move. Like when everybody talks about, he traded Lamar and Karan for Shaq. Like it's that type of move where it's like, okay, we're just gonna go for broke. Right. So I think you consider that I don't think that necessarily is like the greatest move for the Suns, where it's like, okay, what are we doing now? Beal, Tyler, Booker, where Jovic?
I know it's a mess.
I guess
again, it was just in theory.
Yeah, I get you. I get the line of thinking there. Other than that, it's hard to come up with guys. And then really like going back to what you were saying before, because I really think you were onto something there with the Spurs. And mentioning the Dylan Harper thing, like that would be much more like tantalizing to me personally. It's like if you're going to reset and you're starting off with Dylan Harper, who is like the consolation prize in this draft, right? Where like people would be really, really excited to have him. And I think he's the consensus number 2. Like that would be pretty awesome. A big guard who seems like he fits the modern league. He seems like he's going to be, like he's got a lot of star potential. You can seriously see that in his game if it works out. I think that would be really fun. Not only that, they've got, a good amount of picks that they can trade to. They have the number 14 pick in this draft. I think they have another one in the 30s. And then I was looking at their future picks as well. They've got some interesting ones. Like if you're looking at like a package that may or may not include future picks down the line, they have like a 2030 and a 2031. One of those is like swap rights with like Dallas, which I like because, Dallas has aging stars. So 2030, 2031, whatever it is. Like there's some like picks that you can target if you're trying to get like a good package, of draft picks. Now, I'm not saying you're going to get all of them. Like I think it's going to be really hard to get like Dylan Harper plus a bunch of other picks. Like I don't think the Spurs like want to do that. But there is obviously like some logic to that, not only because Harper and his like the positional stuff with Fox and Castle, but the fact that Victor and a guy of his size, like the injury history isn't great, even though he's obviously built very differently from other guys his size in the past. Maybe if you're just like, he's obviously really good and ready to win now, you have Fox already, like, it's like, okay, Harper and other picks, obviously the salary to make it work, and you have Bam. And that's the thing. Like, they have Keldon Johnson, they have Sohan, they have Vassell, they have Barnes. Like, they have a lot of middling contracts that they can put together without trading Castle, so it makes some sense. The Thunder also have like a bevy of middling contracts and also like some bigger ones like Hartenstein that they can put together easily to make the salary work. The Heat can kind of have their pick of the litter there because, they have like also Aaron Wiggins, they've got Cason Wallace's, they've got guys who haven't even shown anything yet because of how like
Far down the depth chart they are.
He drafted like Topic, Dylan Jones, AJ Mitchell has shown something this year as a rookie. He was playing last night in a finals game. They have other future. So like the Thunder would be like the stockpile strategy where like we're getting as many picks and young players like rookie scale deals as possible because they've got a lot of that, right? And the Spurs would be like, okay, the higher level stuff, like maybe you can get a Harper, maybe you can get some of these down the line picks that could be really valuable and kind of put something there. But either way, I don't see it happening. But it is something where like if you're going to reset, I think the people who are into this idea are 100% right that that is where we should have started. I think, to be fair, Ethan and I should have started with like if we're going to do like a reset type of trade, we probably should have started with Bam because what is the point of just trading Tyler and resetting? It's like then by the time you're ready again, Bam's going to be a little bit older. Like like I just think the Heat keep facing this dilemma.
It is a dilemma. You're right.
It comes down to how much do you believe in like your ability to bounce back and get into that playoff mix and attract stars. And I get it. I get why they operate that way to a certain extent. But I think this summer is going to be a real like test of their philosophy, the way with how it goes down. And I think we know that the first priority is going to be to try to, hit one of these upgrades. We'll see what happens though. The real test will be if and when they strike out.
Yeah. And that to see how they pivot will be interesting. To understand, like, because this is ultimately an episode, and I know we've made it Bam centric and gone longer than we expected, but it's really a philosophical episode about like where you take the franchise next. And I just, to your point, I don't know that there is, and there's probably people that are going to tweet a bunch of trades at me that like from teams like Denver, like saying Jokic demands to have better help. So what would they offer for Bam? Think about all the teams out there and how creative you could get with offers, etc. You never know what you could get for Bam. I understand all that. I just think it's pretty far-fetched. And I personally would prefer them to pick a direction like taking a shot on Durant. I know some people cringe at the idea of a 37-year-old Durant for a couple years, but I'll end with this. And then if you have any final thoughts, you can throw them in. Shout out to Prize Picks. Use that code 5 and check out Off the Floor. Don't forget that the Heat, like next offseason, could have $30-40 million in cap space. So like you also have to weigh how quickly do you think you could get to a year like that where you could accelerate this process and get better quickly? And like, is it worth, maybe having a mid-year next year where you own your pick, knowing that you can make dramatic changes that next following season? And I ultimately just think that that's where the Heat will land on this philosophically. But I think that it is important that, if they were in salary cap hell, Alex, for the next 5 seasons out, I think this becomes a much more intense conversation in terms of what they do. But the fact that 2026 offers them some flexibility to try to reshape this, I think that's probably what's going to lean them in the direction of short-term fixes and then understanding that they do have that offseason to get right. Is that kind of your pulse on probably the way that this goes?
Yeah, I get where you're going there. Personally, I'm a little bit more skeptical about the cap space stuff, although I'm not downplaying the value of just having flexibility given the Heat specific scenario where it's like we've been talking about this throughout the show. They're always trying to attract stars, and they're going like, for as much as we talk about like and people talk about Pat striking out, like there were stars that were undoubtedly interested in coming.
Correct.
The obvious one being Dame, and of course, there was interest from Durant and Mitchell. Like there's been time and time again interest. Now, whether they can pull it out for now because of decisions they've made in the past, kind of, handcuffing them in the future and limiting how much that they can do, that's a different story. But I think because of that, it's like, okay, we're going to keep ourselves in this loop of being competitive and being like, okay, if we're not in that contention window, we'll be ready to strike and get right back into it. And that's where, like, going back to what I said at the beginning about the parallels between them and the Pacers, of course, Miami is Miami. The Pacers don't get stars, but both teams operate in the sense of always trying to get into that next competitive build, right?
They don't tank.
Yeah, the Pacers have to hit their draft picks, right? And they have to hit on those trades, and like, and they did it. Like, they did it with Siakam, man. I think a lot of us, or just a lot of people in general, like, downplayed what a guy like that could add to that team, and
Agreed.
downplayed the type of talent that they have. Like, I definitely didn't see that coming with, like, Nemhard and Neesmith. It's like, yeah, these guys were all cool players that maybe you saw when they were coming out of college, but it's like, wow, they really stockpiled a bunch of different guys and developed them into these roles where it's like all of a sudden it's like there's no doubt about it. Like, Neesmith and Nemhard are out there giving, SGA hell. Like, Turner has been Miles Turner for a long time, right? And then Siakam was like the second piece there, but he's not, like, even he is not relied on, right, to do everything. So, like, they've got this perfect blend of a team, right? And I don't think the Heat are like one piece away from being the Pacers in that sense, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if you're being like, okay, KD, come save us, you've got to do stuff over there. So it's like there is no guaranteed route from all the different options.
Oh
that
yeah,
the
no
Heat can
magic
take.
bullet.
Yeah, there's none of them that's like, okay, this is the one that has, like, I feel like they all have their pros and cons, and that's why it keeps coming back to, like, this philosophical stuff. But yeah, man, I like, not to keep, like, saying it, I don't think it's gonna happen with Bam, but there are some, like, there's a compelling case to be made as far as if you can get a real package. Like, again, I'm back to that San Antonio package. If you can get Harper, you can get their 2031 Sacramento swap. If you can get their 2030 Dallas swap, maybe even 2028 Boston, like, they have all of those. And I think that would definitely, like, that would be the one that would make me seriously consider it, not the Thunder one. To your point from earlier, because it's like, okay, blue chip guy plus a bunch of other, like,
Yeah.
very interesting picks down the line. Is Bam gonna get you all that? Is San Antonio gonna give you all that? I don't know. They're probably looking at bigger fish at the moment, but yeah, even then, that's like a best case scenario outcome. That's not like what you can bank on happening if you were to try to press that Bam reset button.
Look, Heat Nation, I just spent 40 minutes talking about the idea of trading Bam Adebayo. I now need therapy. Thank you
You
for
did it in
joining
good
us
faith,
on
man.
5 on the Floor. But we get through these episodes, and I told you I'd talk about it. So now y'all know where I stand. Don't think it's happening. We appreciate everyone joining us. Alex, thank you for your time. Shout out to Prize Picks. Join our contest. Check it out on Twitter. Ethan will be tweeting it from the 5 Reasons Sports account. And don't forget Off the Floor. Most heat anywhere. Peace.